One of the things that I find really frustrating as I've been studying money and economics as it relates to environmental issues and human rights issues is that even, this microphone's not that great, but is the fact that even the progressive or left economists are actually not actually challenging capitalism. So Naomi Klein's new book, This Changes Everything, but then what is the solution? Oh, we just need to regulate capitalism, and we need to have more government programs to help the people who fall through the net, as opposed to someone like me who's kind of questioning the very foundation of a system that's based on money, which is a manufactured, representation, it's a fiction, and also private property. The question is, do humans, governments, or individuals or corporations have a right to own life, own property, own land? So people say we took this land from the Native Americans, but they didn't think of it in terms of the way that we think of it as in private property. So to me, the two fundamental questions that are being avoided by the progressive media and the progressive left are what is money and what is property, and really fundamentally challenging those ideological things that we just take for granted. Like this, there's no way anything could ever be any way different. We just need to get more the government needs to have more programs for the poor. We need more jobs. I've been working on public banking, and I have mixed feelings about it because public state banks will provide more money to do social programs, but it's also still a capitalist system. So Alan Brown writes a book or an article how public banks can save capitalism, and I'm like, I don't want to save capitalism. And a young woman recently, Alan spoke here, a young woman said, well, this economic system is fundamentally at odds with a healthy environment because it's built on growth, it's built on money. And then Ellen kind of got defensive and said, oh, what do you want people to starve to death? We don't have jobs, but there's just a failure of imagination, of thinking of a system outside of having money and property. Our whole lives and our whole world revolve around money and property. So and I know Robert Reich is going to be speaking here. He talks about the virtuous cycle of the 1950s. U.S. corporations and the government were exploiting the heck out of countries all over the world during the 50s. And we had U.S. corporations had a virtual monopoly on world markets. So yeah, okay, people have better incomes in the 50s in America. That's still not good enough. That's not acceptable. Anyways, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the word money is vague to me, economically speaking. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by it. If you mean the system of exchange and the accumulation of capital, I think that's, in a sense, maybe a better way to talk about the dynamic at play. That's just my disposition as an economist, I would say that. I think that it's important to question the precepts of private property as a matter of revolution. I do. For example, the movement of many young people back to the land to try to farm is problematic because they can't gain access to land. It's difficult for them to gain access to land. So I do think that it is important where we can and when we can to question our unmitigated support for private property. If we had enacted, for example, homestead land, a Homestead Act, that did not give people property in fee simple, where land essentially became commodified, I suspect we might have been better off if we had done things that way. We didn't do things that way. But we probably need to talk about redistribution of property and limits to private property. That's certainly the case. I think Naomi Klein's book is quite revolutionary, but I haven't actually finished the entire book, so I don't want to comment on it. But people hedge the issue of revolution. And it's hedged on the left in some sense, certainly in terms of ecological economics. I can't tell half the time what they're talking about. You know, they want a dematerialized, a system that grows in GDP but doesn't grow materially. And for the life of me, I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, we can get some efficiencies in technologies, but I think that's a way of hedging what needs to be called. And I think in some places we do need to actually call the question on the limits of private property. I don't think you can have a revolution in any way and not do that. So I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Well, you said you didn't understand money. I just wanted to recommend a couple of books because money and private property are the two pillars of capitalism, and money is not simply a medium of exchange. It's not just a tool we use that represents real things, goods and services. The financial sector in America is actually larger than the real goods and services sector. 35 to 40% of all of our interest to the banks, to the debt. So money is a debt. And it's not just, it's a representation, but what is it representing? It doesn't represent our values. And in order to achieve anything in society, including nonprofits that are trying to work on climate change, you must first obtain money. So why don't more economists study what is this thing called money and what's the history of it?
Well, a lot of economists actually do study money.
Not many I've read, and I've been studying this. But I just want to say,
but I mean, I think you're confusing two things. I think that that what I tend to concentrate on in terms of the dynamic of the economy is what I call the accumulation of capital. And I think that's an important thing to concentrate on.
the definition of capital, I think, is a first start.
Pardon me?
Defining what is capital. You know, if we're trying to just accumulate more money, and we don't have control over the money creation, and it's all a debt. Everybody's in debt to the bank. So I just want to recommend Theology of Money. It's an amazing book by Philip Goodchild.
I think there's a lot of quackery going on around the issue of money, but I'm not a monetary economist.